And that gives all federally recognized tribes and nations the right to go and get their ancestral remains and religious artifacts back from universities, museums, institutions that have that, in the 30s and the 20s, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when they dug this up, and it's even affected the way archaeology is done today. You don't just go and do your drawings and do your photographs and then take the artifacts and box them up and take them to a warehouse. Typically, you do your drawings, your sketches, and then you put your artifacts back where they are. You cover them back over and then build your road on it or your airport or your golf.
Now, that's what they did down here on Southwood Highway.
Well, we'll be at the Cherokee Symposium, Archaeological Symposium coming up in a few weeks. And,
we can't spell that, but we'll be there.
Yeah. And that's the week right before our fall festival, so I won't get to go this year.
Hey, folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. The phones are now open at 614-5553. Real quick, last night, Bradley High School beat Walker Valley 52-7. Cleveland didn't upset, but they beat Bearden 3 or 4 points, 21-17.
He forgot a score. First time ever.
And Maryville got beat for the first time in many years.
I'd say this is Bullet.
It was a pretty good night. 17-14, Oakland beat them. But, hey, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron.
Hey, Bullet.
Hey, Bullet.
Football was mentioned. Bullet will call in. Did you go to the game last night, Bullet?
No, I listened to it. Cleveland won that game 28-23.
I did. It was a close game there. It was back and forth all night, 28-23. Knox Bearding.
But it could have been very costly, Ron, because I think the quarterback got a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's going to be out, but it could have been costly for him.
Yeah, it sure could be.
But Brady, I know Brady won good, and Ron, I think the upset of the game was Maryville got beat.
Yeah, 17-14. Oakland beat them last year for the state championship in the final game of the season, and I think that makes Maryville losing 5 times in the last 15 years.
Yeah, it is.
5 times.
Bless their hearts.
I am very acquainted with Murfreesboro, Oakland, because Cleveland has played them a long time, and but Oakland has always been a tough team for anybody to play.
Yeah, they were 6A champs last year, and Knox Catholic come down and beat Baylor 62-38 or some ridiculous number. I
didn't know if you knew it, Ron, but Butch Jones was at the Baylor game last night.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, I just found out that his son actually plays for Knox Catholic.
Oh, okay. Well, he was down at the Baylor game then, you mean? Yeah.
I hope he's over at the Cleveland game here in a couple of weeks.
He may be.
But no, I actually seen him on TV last night. He showed old Butch Jones, and that's when they said that his son plays for Knox Catholic.
Well, Knox Catholic put a whipping on Baylor, and then who was the Science Hill beat up on Ottawa pretty good. So that's good for us, the Bears and the Braiders, since we have to play them in a couple of weeks.
Ron, who is that guy that calls the sports on 104? Who is the guy that announces the football? Is it Terry Evans?
Yeah, Terry Evans.
I actually called him last night and won a Jenkins Daily a certificate. I won the trivia last night.
Yeah, that's Terry Evans and Scott Carroll are the two that do that call.
But anyway, I know you ain't talking about football. I know you talked about was talking about baseball there for a little bit there. And
yeah, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, I looked up my email, so I got some of the times and stuff for today's games.
Okay.
All right, guys. I appreciate
Thank you, Bullet.
All right. You can call us here at 614-5553. We got Charlie Rodarmer here. He's the director of the Sequoyah Birthplace Museum. He is a umpire with the Vintage Baseball League. He is a reenactor of every bit of history in the United States. He's got an outfit for it. Costume. No, not a costume. It's not a costume.
Nope.
And all around nice guy.
Period dress.
Thank you.
And he's a good driver behind reckless cars in front of you. Good morning.
Call.
You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
All right, big boy.
Hey.
Joe's calling in early.
Yes, I am, because Joe don't feel as good as she meant to this morning.
Well, what's wrong today?
My right eye's bothering me.
Well, use your left.
Do what?
Use your left one then.
Well, my left one's messed up too.
Oh, well, then you're in trouble today.
So if my doctor don't accept me the first of the week, I'll go somewhere else.
Well, that's it, you know.
You got that right, baby.
Well, you know, when you drink that Jack Daniel, you should drink it out of the glass and out of the bottle because you done poked yourself in the eye and you can't see this morning.
That's right now then, you're cooking with gas. I'll tell you got it, oh boy.
All right.
I'll tell you what, I want to thank you for the songs you played last week.
Well, you're welcome.
It was very nice of you, and I enjoyed it last week. And I'm trying to listen to this here that you're doing, but I don't know nothing about the Indians.
Well, you're going to find out if you listen.
Well, yeah, I've learned quite a few things since you guys have had this program going.
Well, we got Charlie on here. He's an expert. And by the time you get done today, you'll know a lot.
Where's he originally from?
I'm from Canton, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
He's a Southern boy.
Okay.
He has thunderstorms over there in North Carolina, though.
Yeah. Well, okay. I hope you all have a nice weekend, and I'll talk with you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
You got to quit drinking.
I worry about Miss Jo when she doesn't call in, so I'm glad she called in today. Bing, bing.
Well, the first, the Sequoyah Birthplace Museum, most people in our area know, at least know the name Sequoyah, and some may not know all about him. And what was his English name?
He was known as George Gist.
Yes.
And it's spelled in the 18th century and the early 19th century, until we got Social Security cards and driver's license. You just kind of spelled it. And so you can have it spelled Gist, Guest, or Guest. So you'll see it different spellings. But George Gist.
Which has been the problem with my book I'm writing.
Yeah. So I saw a letter by Scott. He had written his own name 3 different ways in one letter. So,
He did.
Yeah.
He wrote it. Yeah, I read it.
So it was not the big thing. It was after Webster created the dictionary and the fact that we did not want to speak the King's English. And so things changed and we got all these different rules and have to do it this way and spell it that way. And so, used to be the point was just get your point out.
Right.
Well,
That's exactly
even when,
right.
as the census takers came along, I've seen my family, my mother's families were Eppersons, but I've seen it spelled Effersons, EFF instead of EPP, and you get all kind of different
Epperson,
spelling.
yeah.
So it makes it hard when you're doing research to figure out the right people.
Charlie, I found an old newspaper article, and when I say old, it was 1938, that mentioned that Sequoyah had spent a short period of time here. And I thought, well, okay, that could just be folklore. Who knows? Then I found, while doing this research for my book, that his brother-in-law actually did live here. Mm-hmm. So it's a good possibility that he did come here to visit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see,
and people were more mobile then than you, especially the people that had a little bit of, I guess we would call not wealth, but that they were known by people.
The traffic wasn't as heavy.
Yeah.
No.
well, and that, people that's, one of the big misconceptions that, people just sit around and didn't go anywhere. But people are, before the
He died
Europeans.
in Mexico.
Yeah.
So, what in the world was he doing in Mexico?
Well, he went to get, he was trying to locate a group of missing Cherokee that had left here during the Revolution, had went west towards Mexico. And he did find them, but the thought was, Chief Ross had thought that if they were invited to come and rejoin the nation, and they were happy where they were, and so they didn't.
Now, there were actually Cherokee that left here and went to Mexico during the removal.
This was...
But that was before.
This group was, in the Revolution.
Yeah.
So,
all things are possible then. It could.
When was Sequoyah born?
He was born around 1776. We don't know exactly which year. His father, Nathaniel Gist, was actually a trader, had been trading with the Cherokees. He was good friends with Washington. George Washington, knowing he had a good relationship with the Cherokee, asked him to go talk to him about not coming in on the side of the British if and when war broke out.
Mm-hmm.
And so he travels in 1775, 1776, and 1777, possibly. One of those 3 years, that's when Sequoyah would have been born. Now, one of the reasons you do a Google search, the Cherokee Nation says he's born in 1760. Well, if you do a timeline, I mean, he's pushing, 80s and setting off for Mexico, and he'd been ill. I don't see that quite happening, but if you do the timeline from 1776, he's in his 60s. Very possible that he'd be up for traveling.
Now, who was his mother?
His mother was Huerta. Huerta was was a very powerful family, the Paint family, head men, leadership roles, and so he kind of is born into part of the power, part of the influential Cherokees in the Overhill. And she raises him very traditionally. We know he goes through the rites to become a warrior, but she gives him that English name, George Gist, and he uses that throughout his life, as well as the Cherokee name, Sequoyah, which it can be translated different ways, but typically it can be translated to mean pig's foot.
Right. And
the one thing that pretty much all scholars agree, he had a limp, but I've found over 25 different reasons why he had a limp. It ranges from rheumatoid arthritis. The most common is a hunting accident. A small boy, he's wounded and almost dies. Another story, which a lot of people don't know, is he joins the United States Army, serves during the Creek War, and one of the stories is he's wounded at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, and that's why he walked with a limp.
It would not have been common for him to have had a birth defect. And then, because a lot of times if there were any noticeable birth defects, they would not necessarily feed the baby, which sounds ugly, but you got to understand their situation then.
Yeah.
They would think that the child couldn't take care of itself.
Some said he had a club foot.
See, and that's
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Club foot or deformed foot.
Yeah.
And so there again, who knows? I mean, it's one of those things. There might be, we know Sequoyah kept diaries. He kept ledger books that he wrote in, and that if we could ever find those books, that would probably answer a lot of questions. But more than likely, they either, as the story goes, he was in a cave in northern Mexico, and there was a flash flood, and he and all of what he had was washed out, and he ended up spending 3 days roaming through the desert. And his son and a couple of other Cherokees who had went to get resupplied come back. They find he's missing. They find his foot tracks. They track him. They get him back to the cave. He supposedly dies there. Other stories are he gets a little better, and they set out for a town in southern Texas. He dies on the way. And the third story, he actually makes it to the little town in Texas and dies there and is buried in an unmarked grave. Everybody leaves. The town blows away, and so nobody knows where Sequoyah is buried. That's the point.
And he is most famous for?
Well, the most famous for, he's the only illiterate person to ever create a writing system by themselves. He does that over a 12-year period. He created the Cherokee syllabary to enable the Cherokee to, they had a spoken language. You give me 2 apples, you give me 2 apples, I have 2 apples. They could say it, but they had no numbering system. They had no writing system to write that on a piece of paper. And another one of the things a lot of people don't know, he created a numbering system first, whereas to help him keep records in his blacksmith shop as to what people owed him for his work. When they decided to take and adopt the writing system, somebody mentioned the fact, he created a numbering system. Well, we know the Arabic system, the white guy system, so we're just going to stay with it. So they didn't adopt Sequoyah's system. But there are people, there's a former vice chief out in Oklahoma that's been developing that numbering system further and working with it. So it is still being used.
Now, he done a blacksmith. He also done copper work, silver work.
He was a silversmith first, and then taught himself to blacksmith. That's where the real money was at that time. And so by blacksmithing, he became an occupation of necessity. His earlier occupations, you traded when you want this silver armlet. Well, that's $10. You got 8. You need to go get $2 more. Come back and see me when you got 10. You want this trade gun? That's 36 deer hides. You got 34. You need to go kill 2 more deer, skin them out, tan them out, come back, and then we'll trade. Well, as a blacksmith, I mean, you're working on plows. Your plow breaks. You need it fixed the day so you can get back out in the field and finish plowing. And so there was where Sequoyah's problem was. He couldn't remember all the work that he was doing and what people owed him for all that work. And so he develops a numbering system. And then that leads to him. It says in his blacksmith shop around 1809, he said, I could put my thoughts, I could write it down on this piece of paper, lay it down, walk away for 2 years, come back, pick it up, and I could remember exactly what I was thinking 2 years ago. And so, you know, I think he's motivated originally by making money. But I think it's over that 12-year period he realizes the value of them being able to read and write as a Cherokee people. Mm-hmm. And so I think, you know, the money's, you know, later in his life, it's the fact that, you know, people call him a chief. He was never a chief. He was never a head man, but he was definitely involved in Cherokee Nation politics and helping to ease. It was basically a civil war broke out within the nation once they got to Oklahoma, because you had different schools of thoughts. The removal, those that didn't want to remove, and you had progressive, and you had, you know, traditional. So you had a lot of things going on, and he tried to balance that and tried to patch things over.
When did they start using his syllabary to do the Phoenix?
If I'm not mistaken, the Phoenix started around 1828, and so it took them several years to get around to buying the press. And what they bought it was a Union press, and it's a design was called the Acorn Press, and it actually looks like it's a cast iron, looks like a cast iron acorn, mm-hmm. And then the press is mounted inside that acorn type shape, and then, you know, all the levers and so forth, you kind of, in the press itself is based off of that. We searched for a Union press. We found a couple of Union presses that exist out there. Now, whether they were the original Phoenix press, nobody really knows for sure. It disappeared before the removal, and nobody's quite sure where it ended up. But there's a couple of Union presses out there. But what we did find, we found a Otis Tuff press that was made in Boston in 1833. And it's the closest thing. It's like if you took a Macintosh and an IBM laptop and set them side by side, they look identical. They do the same thing. It's just a different company.
Yeah, you just got one of those now for the museum,
and
right?
we have a Union Tuff 1833 Acorn press, and we will have that set up and demonstrating hopefully at our fall festival in September. But we'll definitely have it.
Where does one find that?
Well, you start making phone calls. Just like there's geeks like me that like old clothes and uniforms, there's guys that are ate up with printing presses. And I happened to found a couple. One gentleman was, let's just say I would call him on the mercenary side of printing presses. He had what we wanted, but he wanted a lot for it.
Proud of it, right?
He was very proud of it, and he really wanted us to have it. And but then it was a roundabout way. I ended up being connected with a gentleman. His name has slipped my mind right now, but he was a private collector. He actually built and shipped modern printing presses for, like, you know, Chicago Times and you know, the big city newspaper presses, modern things. But he had this massive collection, and when we got to talking, I told him what we were wanting, and he actually sold it to us for half of what it was worth. We were able to give him some tax credit, but he gave us a really good deal on the press itself because he wanted to see it being operated. He wanted to see it being in a museum and not just something sitting static without doing
I think one of the Knoxville newspapers, our TV stations, did a story on you and it the other day, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, now I saw that on Facebook. And
News Sentinel they came down, did an article. It was a secondary article on the news release about us closing the building and going through the renovations and all that. And they came down. I took them through the building.
And done the video there.
Showed the press.
Yeah.
Will the press actually be in the museum, or will you have a special print shop for it?
It'll be in the museum. Okay. We'll have a platform, and it'll be sitting there. There's actually a company we can order Cherokee syllabary, so we'll be able to print in the syllabary, and we can actually make plates of things. Like, one of the things I'd like to do is the number one, volume 1, and number 2, volume 1, is the Constitution of the Cherokee. And in that Cherokee Phoenix, it's printed in English and it's printed in syllabary, side by side, English and Cherokee. And so those are the 2 we want to, and the UT has what we want. So one of them is damaged, so we may have to find another copy. But we'll take photos and make plates of that, and hopefully be reproducing those
Wonderful.
2 newspapers.
Let's get this call.
Go ahead, caller. You live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, good morning. This is RD.
Hey, RD, what's up, buddy? You got one of those printing presses in your barn?
No, but I've got a related question. You got the printing press.
Yes.
Where in the world are you getting the linotype? Where are you getting your type from?
It's a company up north. There was a gentleman over in Cherokee that wrote his dissertation, I think for his, I can't remember if it was his master's or his doctorate, but what he did is he did the research on the Cherokee Phoenix, and in that he then made the paper, printed the book, made the book, and I bought his last 2 copies. They were, I think, about $300. But you imagine making the paper, printing it, then making the book, and doing the binding, doing the whole process, plus the research. This gentleman actually gave us, and I've got the catalog back in my office, that you can order. I mean, you can order Soviet. I mean, the Russian Cyrillic type. You can order whatever font you want, and the company actually has, I think it's 3 different sizes of the Cherokee syllabary.
But see, didn't they have to make it originally?
Yeah. See, that was one of the things. Sequoyah created his own symbols in his own mind by his own hand, and they didn't exist anywhere else in the world. A lot of people learned to use those symbols, and I kind of equate it. It's like cursive to us. His symbols are very flowing, very cursive. Now, when they decided to buy the printing press, Elias Boutnot, who's the editor and ran the press, he looks to buy the press. Well, they can't afford to create all this unseen type that didn't exist. And so Elias Boutnot and several others adapt Sequoyah symbols to the symbols we see today. There, you see a lot of symbols that are familiar: upside down 4s, W's, G's, C's. You put a line through it. You put them
Russian letters, maybe.
German. There's German letters and Greek letters. Well, those existed, and so so that's why the syllabary ends up looking like it did. So Sequoyah creates it on his own, but what we see today is a little bit adapted so that they could afford to buy the printing press.
Yeah, well, the early type. The reason I know this, it's a roundabout reason, but anyway, I've got a bunch of it. I do lead work myself.
Oh.
But, the early type, there was no facilities, especially 17, 18, early 1800s. You actually had to order that, and they would make it in England and transport it over, from what I understand. I did not know that there were still companies in America that cast linotype. I mean, that's a very specialized thing.
Yeah, they're there. I can let Deb know sometime, Ron, where the company is. It, like I say, it's one of those things. I've looked through the book, and that was about 6 months ago, and I haven't picked it back up. But I need to, because we're getting close to time to start planning to get the press set up in the new exhibit. So
I mean, just even setting type is a lost art. I mean, just doing lead work. Now I use linotype. I got a bunch of it. I bought a bunch from an old printing company down here. But I use it to cast bullets. I make bullets and stuff. So.
Oh wow.
The RD, the museum here in Cleveland has a linotype print they used at of course, the Church of God printing, where they done all the redback hymnals, and they done all that on a linotype, and they've actually got one of those machines that makes all the letters and everything that in hot lead and all that. Is down at the museum.
Or is that the one that come out of the Free Press, or is that the one that came up?
No, they found it somewhere else. Some guy had it, and they got it back here. They didn't have any left. Here in Cleveland, I don't think at the church. They'd throw them all away. I literally just took them to the dump.
Yeah.
At one time, there was so many of them, people were just throwing them in the dump for scrap metal and stuff.
Oh man.
For years. So, but they have one here, I know, and they actually have a couple people here in Cleveland know how to operate it. It looks like a place to lose a finger.
Finger, lose an eyeball, yeah.
Yeah.
I was making a bunch of alloy with my boy one time and had a pot explosion and lofted about 10 pounds of lead all over me. And, yeah, I always wore a big apron and loose fitting jacket. I mean, glove. You better be safe. You're working with 750 degree molten metal.
That's working with molten metal and moving parts that are snapping. I think it's a finger and then burn it. You don't snap it off. You burn it off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When that pot let go on me, though, I actually got I bent over and a bunch of sweat dripped off in there, and that's the worst thing you can have. I had 40 pounds of molten lead there, and a big old glob of sweat come off my forehead, and boom! That's all it takes. I mean, it is amazing how a drop of water will lift 10 pounds of lead.
Yeah.
But it went all over me and burnt my chin, burnt my part of my beard off, and then kid got a little on him and rolled around for a bit squalling. And the worst thing when you get molten lead on you, the worst thing you do is wipe it. The best, because now you got a bigger burn and you got a burnt hand. So the best thing you do is just grit your teeth and let it harden up, pick it out. But when it was all said and done, I took my safety goggles off and I had about a nickel-sized glob of molten lead right in the center of my lens. I told my kid, that's why you wear goggles while you're doing this, because I would not have an eyeball right now. So
I'd want to wear a welding helmet myself.
Yeah, well, you got to see what you're doing. So
yeah, I think probably making these things now. There's so much laser technology, and they can go in there and do them. They can load it into a computer and it'll print them for them now.
Well, I'll tell you, I've learned something. That I did not even know there was anybody still actually doing linotype press work. I mean, that's fascinating stuff. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, gentlemen, carry on, ladies.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, R.D.
Thank you, R.D. Very interesting.
See, you taught somebody something today.
Yeah.
If you can touch one line every day, you're doing a great job.
That's for sure.
I want to ask you about shearing sheep, though.
Oh.
No. He had
another talent. We'll talk
weird
about some
little
other day.
incident. Yeah.
How long did it take for the Cherokee Nation and the world to really recognize this Sequoyah being this unbelievable person who created the Silberry? I mean, was it immediate or
immediate?
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah. I mean, they realized. I mean, when for instance, another interesting person I actually portray from time to time is Reverend Samuel Wooster. He was had come down. He was had been a missionary. My understanding was he went back north and he was working on a phonetic Cherokee language to translate the Bible, the New Testament, into Cherokee. And this would have been. He hears that this Cherokee had created a writing system, and this is one of the things I admire about Reverend Samuel Wooster is, here's this white educated guy. He drops what he's doing, and he comes and learns what Sequoyah had created. And
checking it out.
And he then starts using. And so Samuel Wooster actually works very closely with ran the Phoenix.
Bootney?
Bootney, thank you. He worked very closely with Bootney, and then even after Bootney was killed, he continued. He died, I believe it was of stomach cancer, and he would lay in the floor, and he was still translating parts of the Bible and hymns, and the most comfortable place for him to do this was stretched out on his stomach, laying in the floor, and he worked on translating things up till he died.
Who taught the Cherokee people how to read this?
Well,
I mean, how was that? Here's something new that come out of Sequoyah's mind that's not conceivable to anyone else. Basically, I mean, how did they teach that to the children and to the elders and to the adults? How did that get taught?
Well, part of the story. And there's other stories, but kind of he basically is creating this writing system. And one of the stories is he goes to a court case, and he actually wrote out his argument, and he read that he read his argument. And so that kind of put the word out in the community that he had created this writing system. Now, there's a number of people that actually say, well, they didn't understand what he was doing, and he would create it was witchcraft. Mm-hmm. And so the Cherokees had a standing law that they had laws before the Europeans ever showed up. They were oral laws. Everybody knew the law. They knew what was expected. One of those laws was that you could be put to death for witchcraft. And so that's when they sent word to Sequoyah, hey, you need to come before us. And so Aoka is little daughter. She's the only other person that can read and write in Cherokee. And Sequoyah, they go to where the elders are. Well, they take her away. Sequoyah has the elder read or speak, just start talking in Cherokee, and Sequoyah writes down everything using his writing system. He then they all go to where Aoka's at. They hand her this, he would call this a talking leaf, a piece of paper. And the reason is it flutters like a leaf. Mm-hmm. And if you understand the symbols on the leaf, what does it do? It talks. It tells you what it says. Mm-hmm. And so he hands the talking leaf to little Aoka, and the little girl, 6 to 12 years old, she reads word for word what the elder had told Sequoyah. And it's with that test. It proves it's not witchcraft. This is something incredible. We could actually put our words on paper, and we can communicate. And they realize, we could communicate as a people. We create a newspaper and communicate as a nation. So
maybe write down what these white men trying to do to us.
Yeah.
Let's get this call. Hey, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron, Debbie, and your guest. This is Ed Elkins, and I'm really enjoying the show this morning, and I so appreciate what y'all do to keep alive the history of the area.
Thank you.
And it's unbelievable how quickly another year has passed. So the class of 59 is going to be having their 58th reunion tonight. And that'll be at 5 p.m. at Hardee's on Keith Street.
I love the way y'all do that.
And I meant to call in 2 or 3 Saturdays ago and get it on the air, but it seems like I'd let the time get away from me. It'd be after 12 o'clock when my old brain would remember it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just glad that you're having it tonight and not last Saturday when everybody was showing up trying to get eclipse glasses.
Yeah, how about that? That was something, wasn't it?
So anybody out there listening, if you graduated in 59, a year before, year after, and you think you might know a lot of these folks, they'd be happy to have you come by up at Hardee's. On which Hardee's?
On Keith Street there, next to Tractor Supply.
All right, and what was the time?
5 p.m.
All righty.
Folks have to start early because we have to go in early because we can't see how to drive.
Yep, right there with you. Will we get, the question always is, let's go, will we get there before dark?
Yeah, we've got several people that's coming in from out of town this year, so if anyone's listening that's from the class, and even if you're not planning on coming, call your friend and see if you can get them to come up, because we'd like to have at least 40 to 50 people there tonight. And, we never know when we won't have another opportunity.
That's
correct.
Right. Thank you, Ed.
All right, well, thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
Good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
For our break here, Ron.
Yes, every Saturday we take a mid-morning break here, and at our break we play a song called Gone Home. We dedicate that to all the people in our community that's passed away this week. It's a song written by Jumpin' Bill Carlisle in honor of his brother, and it's, of course, everybody likes our song. We go out in town, they said they just love this song. And I'd like to mention one person personally, Roy Higgins, a gentleman I knew all my life. I knew him as a little boy, and he played ball for my dad at Collins Manufacturing, and he was the right fielder and was a tremendous ball player. His brother Ray worked over at the jail for years, and his brother Gary's about my age, and Gary's a preacher here in town at someone will call me here in a few minutes and tell me. But a great family, and sorry to miss those. And also the Navy personnel that lost their lives during the tragedy there at sea. With this honor of them, too. We'll be back here in just a few minutes on Old Town Cleveland.
You're listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Is it time for a new ride? At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, for just $500 today, you can drive it away. Come by any of our 4 locations in Chattanooga, Cleveland, Dayton, and Dalton, Georgia, and find your new ride. For just $500 down, you can drive it away today. Remember, all our vehicles have passed a 200-point inspection and come with a 6-month, 6,000-mile warranty. And you get a free Carfax report and appraisal on your vehicle. Visit us at BuyHerePayHereUSA.com. Offer subject to credit approval. See store for details. We are Buy Here, Pay Here USA.
Hey folks, Glenn here from U.S. Money Shops. If you think all pawn shops are dark and dreary, then you haven't been to U.S. Money Shops. From hard-to-find items to unique jewelry to the latest in electronics, we have it. And guns, we have a huge selection of guns in a variety of colors from a variety of manufacturers. And when you buy any gun at U.S. Money Shops, you get a box of ammo and a case absolutely free. So come see what I'm talking about. Any of our 12 U.S. Money Shops locations in Tennessee and Georgia. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Buy or sell or buy today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Matthews Pool and Spa Company, located in Cleveland, Bradley County for over 45 years. You know them. They're your new swimming pool construction and supply company in Cleveland, Tennessee, now with 4 generations of Matthews to serve you. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, for over 45 years, your swimming pool, construction and supply company, spa or hot tub installation and maintenance. Get all of your supplies for your pool or spa right now. That's the new location in the old Quinn Electric Company building behind KFC at 2724 Key Street in Cleveland. Call Matthews now, 476-4521. You better get your order in now for your new pool construction for this spring and summer. 476-4521. Matthews Pool and Spa Company. Gonna jump in. Woo!
Say gone, they have gone home, gone, they have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as the work here was done. Gone home, they have gone home, gone home, they have gone home. Sadly, they have gone home, gone home. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as the work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home, gone home. They have gone home. just me.
Welcome back to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553 if you happen to be out of the area. That's area code 423-614-5553. We got Charlie Rodarm in here today. He's the director of the Sequoyah Birthplace Museum in Von Nor, Tennessee. You can't miss it. It's one of the biggest places in Von Nor. You turn it to Hardee's. Hardee's loves that you give them as a reference on the map.
Now, I like to give free plugs to Sloan's, the BP gas station is right there. Because if you go into Sloan's, if Sloan's doesn't have it, you don't need it.
Isn't that true? I went in there one day, and we were going to Gatlinburg, and we stopped and get gas there. Usually we'll fill up a little there. And we was walking through the hardware store, and they had something there, and I couldn't figure out, what in the devil is it? It was a little wheel, but the wheel had little metal spokes on it. It was a nut thing. You roll it along the ground, and the nuts would hit it, and it'd pop up, and it'd be inside the basket, so you didn't have to pick up your acorns or your chestnuts and things.
We go in there and play.
Yeah. I didn't know. I had no idea what in the deal it was. I had to ask somebody, but it was a nut gatherer.
Once we went to break, Charlie mentioned someone that passed in the Cherokee community this week, and I'd like for him to talk about Shirley for just a moment.
You wait till you guys donut.
By the way, I didn't run. I walked over to the Village Bake Shop and got some bottles of water, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings and not get donuts, too. So if you hear a moment of silence, it's us eating our donuts.
Mm-hmm. Very tasty donut. Shirley Oswald she was a native speaker from Snowbird over in Graham County, North Carolina, near Robbinsville. When she was born, her first language was Cherokee, and she learned to speak English when she went to elementary school, to first grade. And so Shirley was an incredible human, a beautiful person, caring. I don't think that she never met an enemy. She was just, she was an incredible human being.
She probably, with the help of some others, single-handedly started the Cherokee program, the Cherokee language program in Cherokee, North Carolina.
Well, I got to Sequoyah Birthplace in 2000, and I remember the discussions they were happening then, that they realized that by the year 2030, pretty much every native speaker would be dead. And the problem was the Cherokee school system was teaching Cherokee. You got it from kindergarten, first grade, all the way through the 12th, but it's kind of like, a foreign language, il est grand, il est blanc, il est méchant.
Yeah,
and that's why you walk away with
natural.
Ça va très bien, merci, y'all.
Well, and they did it the most intelligent way. And see, I was kind of going through school, getting my second language degree at this time, so I was really paying attention to them. But they started out with the little preschoolers who are sponges, who are learning everything.
Yeah, they started the Gadua Academy, and it started with the K, and then those went to first grade, second grade. I think they're up to sixth grade now. And so they go to school and they learn in Cherokee. And the residual effect, which I think that they were surprised they didn't quite think would happen, but the kids started teaching their parents to speak the language. Those parents that couldn't speak, they were learning because their kids were speaking it. And so Shirley, that was one of the things. They started Cherokee language camps for the kids there in Robbinsville, Snowbird area, back over on the reservation on Koala there in Cherokee. And she was, I was at the museum maybe a year, 2 years. Within the first year to 2 years, Shirley started coming over and doing a Cherokee language class at Sequoyah Birthplace. And originally we would get a grant that would help fund, for her cost and time to come to teach the class. And as the years ticked by, it's one of the programs that became self-sustaining. We were able, the last class, Shirley hasn't been able to participate. She in her fight for cancer, it was I guess about a year, 2 years. She wasn't able to come, but her brother has been coming and taking her place and teaching the advanced class. And then a number of years ago, her very good friend Mary Brown started teaching the beginning intermediate class. And so our last class, I think it
was a dying language.
Yeah, and
it was a dying language.
That, nobody was speaking, nobody was talking, only the old people. And I would go over to Cherokee, and this was even years earlier. I would hear like little grandma and grandpa speaking Cherokee, and I like follow them around. I'm surprised I never got arrested for being a stalker.
Especially in Southern
outfits.
Well,
there's a man in a skirt following me.
Normally I was in modern clothes when I was over there for some reason, but I would listen, just to listen to the language and hear it.
Beautiful.
And kind of, and so, the Eastern Band, the Cherokee Nation, the Cherokee have lost probably one of the greatest. She had been made a
she was the
beloved woman,
which there only were 3 alive at that time.
Right.
I mean, she was the 3rd one.
And she loved.
That's the biggest level of respect from the people. Well, we're going to miss Shirley. Thank you for.
While I'm talking,
while
I'm thinking, I would like to, and I've mentioned this several times, is thank the Cleveland City School System. They are naming their newest elementary school, which is now breaking ground now.
Yeah.
It's going to be called the Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary School.
Neat.
Now, Candies Creek is going to be spelled, and everybody in town saying, well, they're spelled it wrong. They spelled it C-A-N-D apostrophe S. And here it's spelled C-A-N-D-I-E-S. Well, Candies Creek was Candies Creek at one time, and by federal law, there was a public act that was passed that you cannot have possessive names of creeks and bridges and certain things, and there are a few exceptions in the United States. Martha's Vineyard is one of the most notable ones. But so Harris Creek was Harris Creek, H-A-R-E apostrophe Hare Conrad. So,
or Conrad
so that's why it's going to be called
Hare Conrad.
Candies apostrophe S Creek Cherokee School. I know it's a long name. We had asked it to be named Candies Creek, either way they spelled it, but they wanted to do that. They're meeting with the Eastern Band.
They're consulting so that we won't do anything silly.
They want to make it honored, and so thank them. And folks, if you don't realize, it's the first elementary school in the history of Cleveland, Tennessee, or the city. It was not named after a former superintendent of schools,
except for Cleveland.
Yeah, well, that's a high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's the first one that it's a grammar school. So that's pretty amazing, and it's done because it's at the where the Candy Creek Mission was built. It's right across the street from it. Where the school is probably where they farmed
their farmland that ran up against the river. The creek. And Reverend Stephen Foreman, was associated and lived right there next to Candies Creek Mission. He also worked really hard in those times to help Washer, or whatever his name was, to translate the Bible into Cherokee. Yeah, but Stephen Foreman lived here for a great long time. And then Jesse Bushyhead went to school at Candies Creek along with the Bigsby children. A lot of names you would recognize, and that one of the rosters is in my book.
So thanks to City School Board for honoring our Cherokee history and heritage here.
There you go. Yay for them. We talked about, I believe I mentioned it last week, the Cherokee, what we would call a fable or a folk tale, I guess, is that the eclipse was the giant frog in the sky that would swallow the sun, and everybody would make a lot of noise, and it'd kind of make it spit the sun out and go on. And that's how they reckoned with the eclipse.
Right.
So what happened up at your place the other day during the eclipse?
Well,
did y'all have an organized thing, or was it just?
Well, it happened. I was wanting to focus on just what we were doing with the building and all that, and the town of Von Orr actually supplied us with a number of the eclipse glasses, and we had a band approach us about making music on their amphitheater, and one of the lead singers actually put together a really awesome program she had me come and kind of tell the frog swallowing the sun, and we all make noise. And so, and then she had taped several really cool songs, and she had a little, I guess, a scientific, what's happening kind of thing. And she played all that. And after they were playing music, then we did that little program. And then she just put the music on, and of course the clips happened. We had one little girl that passed out from not having enough water, but the EMS guys handled that, and so that was the only major problem that we had.
How many people do you think you had there?
We had about 1,400 people. We had over 300 cars, and we did.
You hadn't planned to have anything. People just showed up because they felt comfortable there. Man, I bet it was pretty by the water.
Oh.
Well, you weren't right by the water, are you?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Fort Loudon had over 1,000 cars, and they were figuring about 3,000 people that were over there. They got tons of porta johns, and the problem with their place was that you've got that one road that goes in, and so it was a nightmare trying to get everybody back out of there afterwards. A lot of people at our site, you could see the causeway going up 360, and you could see the cars backed up. A lot of people just sat there, picnicked, and continued to listen.
So where did you have folks from?
We had several cars from Canada. We had one gentleman that came on our website and thanked us, and he was from California, had picked up family from Kentucky, and we had one of the things, we had a gentleman that we got there at 7, and the fort was supposed to open their gates at 8. We were going to open our gates at 9, and the cars were already backed up trying to get into the fort back to us, and then the cars trying to get into my place were backed up down around the causeway, and
you thought, whoa,
yeah,
whoa, George.
And a friend of mine, Joy, she actually recruited several guys that were standing there, one from Pennsylvania, and so he helped give out information, tell people what to do, and keep the road clear. And so everybody was really oppressed, and they used our trash cans. Maybe 2 or 3 little pieces of trash that we had to pick up.
I love it. I thought that was such a great thing. I thought it was going to be good, but it really turned out to be a whole lot better. But I think one of the couple of funny things that I thought happened during the clips, we had our 5-year-old granddaughter with us, and they had, of course, we talked to her too, but kindergarten had told her all about the eclipse, and she could explain it in great detail. Yeah. It was pretty impressive. And she talked about totality.
Wow.
But she didn't realize that totality meant it was going to get really dark. It scared the bejeevers out of her. She was not real happy for those few seconds with us telling her it was going to be okay. She thought the giant frog had already arrived. And she was a little scared about that. And I think a funny thing, too, is Kim Fisher, my principal down at Black Fox, has fainting goats.
Oh.
And one of the goats got overwhelmed by it all and just fell over. And it was so funny to see the picture. All the rest of the goats are peeping out of the little shed because they think, okay, it's nighttime, we're going in the shed, and that one didn't make it before it just...
His legs are straight.
It's pretty funny.
The word teleco, what's the source of that word? Do you know?
Wait a minute, let him just plug it in any hole.
Okay.
Teleco, is it what's the source of that word, Teleco River, or is that a Cherokee word or not?
It's been on the map for a long time. I'm
not sure. I know I've looked at it. I'm thinking. I'm not. I'd have to look.
I think it was the name of a big village, and it just been spelled a lot of different ways. Let me tell you a little story about the Unicole Highway. And Mary Jane from Coker Creek sent me this, and I'm going to put it on Facebook. She said she was driving along, and there was Quentin Bass down in a ditch. Not with his car. He and Quentin Bass, you guys might remember, is an archaeologist with the Forest Service. And she's driving along. Well, there's Quentin out of his car, down in the ditch, looking around. And he said they were here. And she said, who? Well, all along the ditch line were, and they have a big fancy name, and I don't know that name, the green cone plants. And it looks like our typical purple cones with the little brown head on them, or the brown-eyed Susans. But the whole plant's green. It doesn't have very many blossoms on it, and it has a split leaf on it. But the Cherokees would cook that the way we do collard greens and eat it. So again, there's another reminder that they came through there.
Okay.
And Quentin was real impressed with that, being the archaeologist that he is. But Mary Jane said, I just had to stop. See what he was doing in that ditch.
Von Or, is that, any source of what Von Or means? It's a strange word sounding, Von Or.
I don't know.
I've read this. This was stuff I was reading when I first got to the museum 17 years ago.
I don't know.
Well, somebody said it had to do with something about mining, and then there was I remember reading about there was a medical doctor that lived there in that area and actually came up with the name Von Or, and exactly what it meant or I've heard several different stories of why the name Von Or comes about, but
I didn't know either. So it's do you have a website? I'm
yes.
Sure. Tell us what that is.
Okay. You can visit the museum website's www.Sequoyah, Sequoyah Museum, and it's all one word, Sequoyah Museum, museum.org. You can visit our website. We've got information. You can like us on Facebook. We have a site on Facebook. We try to post upcoming events, anything that's happening, and of course, kind of keep your eye out for September 9th and 10th when our fall festival.
Tell us what happens at this fall festival real quick.
Well, we have a number of Cherokees. We have the Cherokee Warriors, the Warriors of Anagadua that come over,
right? And
they will be dancing and have group dances, and so if you were interested in dancing, like dancing, you can certainly join in with them. We have a number of different demonstrators and educators that'll be Sonny Ledford's Bullet Standing Deer. There's several other guys that'll be doing moccasin making, wood carving, be doing traditional Cherokee arts and crafts.
Basket.
I think Mary Thompson will be there, so she'll be doing baskets and pottery.
I had some lady at Red Clay that spent several minutes showing me something about a double weave, and she might as well have been talking to me in Cherokee because my mind just doesn't work like that. And basket weaving is a very
intricate.
Will all the exhibits be native?
Pretty much, we'll have. It's kind of arts, Cherokee and Appalachian arts and crafts.
Okay.
So we'll have. I think we might have a quilting lady there. Our Cherokee cook. We don't have any facility for her, so we won't have her over doing the Cherokee cooking. That'll be something we'll have definitely next year.
No fry bread?
We will have Nikki's fry bread. So Nikki's will be there doing.
I will be there.
The first day at Red Clay, the line was as long as a football field. In that sun, all day long. At 10:45 the next morning, Ron was standing at Nikki's waiting for her to open up.
At 11 o'clock, and I was second in line, and I got fry bread on the there's a lot of the exhibitors, and the Warriors were there dancing. If you didn't get a chance to see them down at Red Clay, you need to go up here. This is really very entertaining.
So is there an admission fee?
Yeah, we have a small admission fee. It's $5 each. 12 and under are free. We do have a Civil War battle that's, I believe, at 3 o'clock, and it is the battle. One of the battles. I don't know if it's Saturday or Sunday or maybe both days. We'll be doing the Battle of Tomotley, which was Tomotley Ford. That ford was about 2-3 miles from where the museum's located. Sherman came across there.
Okay.
There were several little battles and little skirmishes that happened right there at that ford. The one in particular, the Union kind of ambushed some Confederate Thomas's Legion, which had Cherokees in the Legion. So that's how it's connected to Sequoyah Birthplace Museum, and why we've been doing these Civil War reenactments is because of Thomas's Legion. Will Thomas was a very strong secessionist, and the Cherokees knew that. And he was, I think, in Raleigh when the state actually was voting to secede. And by the time he got back to Cherokee, to Qualla Boundary, the Cherokees had already given their support to the Confederacy, and they said the Confederate Army had already wanted to bring those Cherokee volunteers and send them down to the swamps of South Carolina. And of course, Thomas gets back and he gets in touch with the authorities and says, these people are mountain people. They don't know anything about a swamp. And
Good point.
Thomas actually starts the Thomas's Legion. Now, Legion back during the Civil War period, it was much more earlier military concept. The Legion was everything. It was like the 82nd Airborne. They had every single thing they needed. They had infantry, cavalry, and artillery. And then you would use a Legion. Usually there were elite troops to break holes and to take things. And the Confederate Army didn't really understand legions very well, so they never really used Thomas's Legion like it should have been. But they actually spent the majority of the war here in East Tennessee. They sent them over. They came over Abrams Creek, marched right by where the museum is today. They went down to Sweetwater. They loaded them on a train in Sweetwater, took them up to Knoxville. They ended up guarding the bridge up at Strawberry Plains. Their first battle was at Baptist Gap, which is one gap over from Cumberland Gap. And they'd been told they were going to fight. This is how you will fight: marching in lines, giving orders, and you will fire the muskets. And as a unit, well, guess what the Union did? Those Union guys ambushed them, and in the ambush they killed an officer who was the grandson of Junaluska. And as soon as the Cherokees saw that he had been killed, they charged into the ambush.
They went rogue on them.
Yes, and in the process, there were some scalps that were taken, and some of the Union soldiers were not necessarily dead either. Now, when all this gets back to, it goes up the chain of command. I understand that there were actually words exchanged between Lincoln and Jefferson Davis. That was one of the things the Union was concerned about, the natives coming in on the Confederacy side. And so there was discussions that were held. I'm trying to remember, the commanding general with Thomas and with the Cherokees. And the Cherokees did not take any more scalps through the rest of the war. And those scalps were returned and were buried with the Union dead from the Battle of Baptist Gap. So the pretty much, I think it was about 400 Cherokee men joined Thomas's Legion, and there were actually other Cherokees that went into other regiments. But that would have been almost every single able-bodied male in Cherokee, North Carolina.
Do you think that the Cherokees fought with the Confederacy because they really didn't trust the northern side of the world?
There's several accounts of that, and that's, I think, one of the things the United States at that time was very nervous about, because the U.S. had broken a lot of treaties, and I think this was actually true out west with the Cherokee Nation. Is, we've been lied to, and treaties have been broken, and the Confederacy are a new government, and let's give them a chance.
Well, did the Creek and the Seminole and Choctaw, did they follow suit, or did they stay out of it? I'm not heard.
Most Indians, tribes, and nations stayed out of it. The Cherokee, the last general to surrender west of the Mississippi was General Wadey, which was a Cherokee. The last battle that Thomas's Legion fought was actually a running battle from, I think, Sevierville to Gatlinburg, and then they withdrew back over to North Carolina to the boundary. And there was a group of the Thomas's Legion. I've always loved this story. Is Thomas sent people into Waynesville, and the Union had came in and had taken Waynesville, occupied it. And so Thomas sent some people down and started rumors that Lee had withdrawn his army in Northern Virginia to Western North Carolina. And then he took his Cherokees and had them go up into the mountains, that Balsam Mountains that make a big semicircle around Waynesville, North Carolina. And they built big bonfires all up and down around those mountains. And then he had the Cherokees go down near town and start singing and making war dances and making a lot of noise. And the Union withdrew from Waynesville. They came back a week later a little bit upset, but he ran them out. Thomas got them out of Waynesville there.
We almost had a big battle here in Cleveland. We never did have a big one. We had skirmishes around, but there was a guy making what they called torpedoes here. and is a bomb of some type. But the Union was coming to burn the plant, and the Southern the Confederate were coming to protect it.
Well, actually, the Southerners were leaving town, so they thought we better blow all this up before we leave.
Well, anyway, it
heck of a
just
mess.
blowed up, and so both sides hear all this explosion going on, and they both ran. So
they both thought they were under attack. Yeah, and there were these missiles flying through Cleveland, and they had stored everything in a house, which was completely destroyed.
What was the main route out of where Von Orr is there, or where the Ford was, right down below you? Said, what was the main route south and north for the Cherokee Indian there?
Well, you had the Unicoi Turnpike, which was to come from Charleston, South Carolina to Chota, and then that was extended on to Fort Loudon. And then you would come, actually, the old roadbed from the fort comes across the tail end of our property, of the museum property, and you can see the old road grade, the beautiful ditch and the huge oak trees that line that ditch. And you would have come down and you would have forded the Tellico Creek or river, and then you would have turned north or south to go to Hiwassee or to go towards what now is, Knoxville. Mm-hmm. My understanding, the road, it was called the Warrior's Path, which was the one that was running kind of north to south. And so Von Orr was kind of a crossroads. There again, it was why you end up, another person that crossed at Tomotley Ford was Custer. General Custer came through there. He was part of the detachment that was sent up to Tellico Plains to destroy it, but because Stokely was a Union.
I think that same road came down and came through Columbus, which was the first county seat for Polk County. Came across country, came over the hill at Union Church there on Benton Pike or Bates Pike, Ron. Bates Pike. Came across the hill, followed Cahola Creek, and went through McDonald. And I'm pointing. Are y'all seeing me point? And, went down through Chattanooga, too.
Good thing. She actually pointed in the right direction inside this building. I was pretty impressed. Now,
I'm usually like the scarecrow.
Did the Cherokee there, did they go down and report to New Echota? I mean, was that the capital for everybody, or was that before? Where you were, was it different before the removal?
Echota was pretty big.
Echota didn't exist, actually.
Okay, because that was had already.
Well, what happens is you've got like three major areas of Cherokee. You've got the lower towns, which is kind of over near South Carolina, Hendersonville, North Carolina, kind of that area. Yeah. Then you got the middle towns. That's where like Bryson City, Cherokee is today, maybe stretching to Canton. So you've got that area down to Franklin. Those are the middle towns. And then you've got the Overhill, which is what's over this side of the mountain. So you've got, what's in Von Orr. When Timberlake visits in 1762, he just visits right there at Chota, Tanasi, and those towns. And so everybody thinks of that as the Overhill. The Overhill was actually, Townsend, up past Knoxville, down south towards what's now Georgia. So this was all the Overhill. Now, the English were the British were very frustrated because every time they wanted a treaty with the Cherokee, they had to go to every single town and talk to every single person, and everybody had to agree. Well, the Cherokee the British English kept lobbying for the Cherokee to create a one
government
leader. We talk to him, he deals with everybody, and then comes back. And it was Moytoy, who was from the Tahlequah, what's now Tellico Plains. He was chosen. Some people say they look at him as a puppet, or there's different. Everybody has a different view of Moytoy, but he was chosen as the first emperor, and he sets up his capital in the little town of Tanasi, which is on the Tanasi River, and so Tanasi is the capital. Chota, nothing really exists over in Chota until maybe the 1740s, and it becomes a suburb of Tanasi. And then by the 1750s, Tanasi, I guess it's crowded. Chota is the place to be. It's higher ground. And so Moytoy's son moves the capital to Chota. And then Chota becomes the peace city, the white town. and the very, one of the sacred sites for Cherokee.
So when where Sequoyah Museum is now, when did they get pressed out of and became the United States? I mean, we know it kept getting pushed southward. So when did that area change?
It was I think the Treaty of 1819.
Okay.
By 1819, all the Cherokees had packed up and moved south. And so that's when you've got these pockets of Cherokee who stay up near Coker Creek and up near Tellico Plains,
which was remote then.
Right.
I mean, just they could hide.
Well, they wasn't necessarily hiding.
They were just there.
They just stayed.
Yeah.
And at that point, they ceased to exist as Cherokee citizens because they didn't go with the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Those that left are Cherokee citizens. Those that stayed, you lost your citizenship.
So around Tellico, up around Tellico Plains, where the Indian boundary is, that's those people, right?
Actually, they were in the United States. That's how they lost their Cherokee citizenship. There's one little leg, it looks like a little dog's leg or something. It goes up on that map, and that's part of Monroe County that was supposed to go with that treaty, and it didn't go. And we called it the Indian Boundary.
Okay.
Recreation areas up there. We called it Indian Boundary all of our life, not realizing that the reason it was called Indian Boundary is because you couldn't go over there because that was the Indian Boundary.
So was Monroe County formed 1890, 1820, or when did Monroe?
I think it was 1820, right after.
So as the point is, as we move the Cherokees south, they start becoming the United States or Tennessee in the United States. I guess it wasn't North Carolina at that time, was it?
No, it was Tennessee then.
Yeah, 1796 would be Tennessee. So they started naming the counties Monroe and of course Madisonville. We don't know where all those names come, and Monroe. Monroe was a president. Was he named after?
I guess
county?
We don't know.
I read it.
We don't know.
17 years. I want to say Monroe. It was actually the Secretary of War or something.
But Charlie made a really good point, and I hope some folks were listening. He said, we'll say, I have Indian Cherokee ancestors, but they're not on any of those rolls. You don't find their names anywhere. Well, they had stayed where they really shouldn't have stayed, but by that you were saying, okay, I'll become a U.S. citizen.
Well, they're not necessarily recognized as citizens, but
they were just not there.
If you didn't go, then you did not maintain your citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
You were basically turning your back on the Cherokee Nation, so therefore you were not a part of the citizen. That's why the Cherokee Nation is really adamant about being a Cherokee citizen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Cherokee in North Carolina talk about being an enrolled member, and that's because of the 1924
They kept
Baker
up with the
Roll.
enrollments.
And that list is where their enrollment is based off of.
But you can be Cherokee and not be on any of those lists.
Yeah, we try to explain that to people when we're sitting at booths, saying is that, well, you very well could have Cherokee heritage, but your opportunity to prove it is tough.
You can be a descendant, but
if you were the ones you're talking about who didn't go with them, you may never prove you're a Cherokee. You could be, but you can't prove it. Like I say, I've always told I was Cherokee, as every Southerner has been told that lives in this area, and I cannot prove it. I mean, and I it doesn't. I'm not looking to be Cherokee. I'm just saying, I do my family history all the time, and I go down this leg one day and work on it, and then go down the other leg. And if I was to find them, I'd say, okay, great. I had my ancestry done. I'm as white as they come. There was no anything else. I'm Scottish, Irish, English, German.
But that was a good way to put that. Because I've tried to explain that to
even
folks.
people who may have Cherokee heritage in there, they'll find is if Ancestry doesn't have Cherokees who are getting their DNA done, they're not going to be in that database.
Right.
And Cherokees do not, just like they don't share their, for research for their remains, they don't like to even give up their spit because that's theirs.
Right.
You got to get out here, don't you?
Yeah, I need to.
Charlie's he's got to go be an umpire today.
Not get himself in trouble. So we're going to talk these last few minutes. Thank you, Charlie, for coming in. I hope that your fall festival's really big. Oh, go ahead.
Let me mention, today, if you're interested, there's going to be vintage baseball games down at the 6th Cavalry Museum in Fort Oglethorpe. today, the August 26th, it's at noon is the Travelers versus the Lightfoot. And then at 2:30, it's the Scouts versus Mountain City. And so those are the two games that'll be happening down at Fort Oglethorpe at the 6th Cavalry Museum. And then if you're interested, the Ramsey House at 12 o'clock is the Distillers versus the Holstons. And at 2:30, the game that I'll be umpiring is the Cumberlanders versus the Machinists. So,
all right. And these are free events.
Free events.
So if you've never seen, it'd be great to take your kids out. A lot of fun to watch and everything. And so something you can do this afternoon. It doesn't cost you an arm and leg, and it's entertaining.
And you usually get a hot dog. And
oh well.
Yeah, so
yeah. Well, there went my admission process, about $10, you know. Thanks, Charlie. And the Sequoyah Museum most likely reopens completely probably in January. You want to be there in line to see, say you was there the day one.
Will the exhibits be ready in January?
Well, the exhibits won't be ready until June or
July.
June.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
We'll just get back in the building.
You get back in the building.
But if you're, Christmas comes around, birthdays come around, you need to buy a unique gift for somebody.
Please.
It is a great place.
Come over to our gift shop.
Charlie cleaned up his office and found a couch.
Yeah.
And I understand also if you just want to have a picnic down on the water, you can just come and have a picnic on your grounds, right?
Yeah, come have a picnic. You can hike the Max. The hiking trail's 1.5 miles. Goes
I don't hike.
Along the. Well, you can take a leisurely stroll.
I don't leisurely stroll. I'm older, Charlie. I don't stroll in the heat.
Yeah.
It'll have to be cooler before I stroll. So, Charlie, thank you so much, and hope to have you back. I'm going to be there when it happens.
Thank you all for having me.
All right, bye-bye, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Hey, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, I am.
Hey, what's going on?
This T-Bandy.
Hey.
I've got a fish truck coming on my birthday, the 23rd of September.
All right, so you can get fish, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's a pretty day for you that day. And if people need to order fish, who they call you at what number? 478?
478-2405. Yeah.
Yep.
Senior moment there.
That quiet moment's brought on by a senior moment.
I don't mind the senior moments. It's those senior half hours that are getting me.
I know what you're talking about, too.
How old will you be on your birthday, T?
84.
84.
Don't look a day over 90.
Yeah.
Okay, T. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. 84. Wow.
Charlie Road Armor, he just had to leave. He had to thank him for rushing down here today, then rushing up to Knoxville to be an umpire in if you could have seen him in here in his outfit, he's dressed in the 1860s period dress.
I was burning up looking at it. He had on a wool vest, a wool coat.
Pants, and he said that he has to ask for permission from the ladies to be able to take off his coat to call it in his shorts and in his sleeve shirt. I'm going, goodness gracious. I mean, and it's 100 degrees out today. So thanks to Charlie and all he does and his support of the history of the Cherokee people in this area here.
He has really worked for years to get that museum redone with the Cherokee, the Eastern Band of Cherokees. And we'd like to say again that Chief Sneed, they have a new chief over there now. He's the one that brought in all that great entertainment culture, Cherokee culture, to Red Clay. And now they're redoing the museum, and they've supported it for years, but they haven't redone it the way it needed to be done. And I'm sure they're going to have a lot of interactive stuff there.
Next Saturday, next Saturday and Sunday will be their fall festival?
On the 9th.
On the 9th, okay.
Yes.
That's
the 9th and 10th at 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. both days at Sequoyah Birthplace Museum. He said for grown-ups it's $5 each. Under 12 is free. And they have the Birds of Prey program there. Ron, you really enjoy that.
Fry bread.
Fry bread. And fry bread.
Fry bread you can get with like powdered sugar on it. You can get powdered sugar and strawberries on it. Or you can get a fry bread. It's made like a taco. They put all kinds of stuff on it. You can get just about anything you want to put on top of it. But if you
I did find
fry bread. That's F-R-Y bread. Fry bread.
The polo matches down at Bendabout Farms are free, and they pass out free Coca-Cola products. It's at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 16th and Sunday the 17th. It'll be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It only lasts a little bit over an hour, or maybe
over an hour.
A little bit over an hour, and with the break, it probably puts it a little closer to an hour and 45 minutes or something. So don't be late.
Now, they
come
don't
early, get a nice seat.
They don't have quarters; they have chuckers.
Yeah.
That's what a quarter is, or a segment of the game is called a chucker. So have your polo, and when they at what we call halftime, you are required to get out of the stands and walk on the field and step on the divots the horses made. And the kids love doing that, running across the field with the divots and all that. So if you've not seen a polo match, if you're on YouTube, go and look up Benabout Farm Polo. It's a little video that Deb and I did for about the polo matches, and just get an idea. People dress up, some people don't. People picnic on the grounds. It's a lot of fun, and we thanks to the staff at Benabout Farms and Mr. Johnston for opening this up to the public absolutely free. Like I say, there's free waters and soft drinks there.
Coca-Cola products.
All Coca-Cola products. You may know, if you don't know the tie, just ask someone around town. There is a tie to Coca-Cola and the Benabout Farms.
Also, the class of 1959 of Bradley High School will be gathering this afternoon at 6 p.m. at Hardee's on Keith Street. And if you graduated shortly before that or shortly after that, and you think you might know a lot of these folks, just go by. It's kind of Dutch Street. And
all you guys can
they had a pretty good crowd last year.
You can get senior soft drinks.
Yeah.
Well, and also Sequoyah Museum.
I laugh, but I always ask for mine.
Sequoyah Museum is Sequoyah Birthplace Museum, but if you're looking up on the internet, it's sequoiahmuseum.org, and you can go there. And also you can follow them on Facebook. Also, if you'd be interested in the Tennessee Trail of Tears Association, Deb is the president this year for the next 2 years. And you can go to Facebook, and it's TN, Tennessee, TN, Trail of Tears Association, and you can follow that activities there. There's always a lot of history and information
I try
on
to
there.
keep it going.
And you can join and follow us. We do that. If you're really interested, you can go to the National Trail of Tears Association, to their website. You can join the National Trail of Tears Association, and when you join that organization, you get to choose one state as your state. So it costs you $25 to be a member of the National Trail of Tears Association, and then you select Tennessee, and then you become a member of the Tennessee organization. If you'd like to be a member of Tennessee and Georgia, you just got to add $10. It's $10 for every additional state. So there are only 7 states considered in the Trail of
almost
Tears.
all of that money comes back to the chapter, and we use it for putting up signs and doing education and stuff like that. We'll be at the International Cowpea Festival on September the 9th.
Yes, sir.
We'll be there all day, handing out brochures and maps of the trails and all that kind of, answering your questions and trying to help you a little bit with your questions.
And if you're really interested in Cherokee history, the National Trail of Tears Convention and Symposium will be in October in Oklahoma, right at the edge of Arkansas and Oklahoma.
Starting like the 16th of October.
At some big casino that's actually, Arkansas is hosting the event, and I think the parking lot's in Arkansas and the casino's across the across the line there in the parking lot in Oklahoma. So we'll be going there, and there's a chance for you to do that. You had to be a member to join, and then your registration fee is
very reasonable for what we do. It's like $100, and they take us on big bus drives. They take us on big field trip, which is worth the admission.
There's food involved, and so you make sure, if you're really interested in that, if you want to learn more about the Trail of Tears, and great events there, and it's a symposium, so you'll learn about. And one of the presenters this year, I'm happy to say, is Debbie Moore will be a presenter at the National Trail of Tears Association, talking about her new book coming out here shortly. She every day works about midnight at home doing the writing the book. She's at 421 pages today, and she's still got the index to do and the introduction.
Which is quite a long introduction, because I've got to explain when it says someone had a round log cabin, it's not a cabin that's round, it's made of round logs. Mm-hmm. So I've got to explain those kinds of things, and then I had found the thing that said paled fence. I had a hard time reading what that paled word was. And I finally figured it out and found out it was a paling fence, which is like a little picket fence that you put around your garden. Of course, in those days and times, there were lots of wild animals and domestic animals all roaming around, so you tried to keep them out of your garden.
Well, you'd hope the little animals try to jump over and get impaled on the stakes and not eat your corn.
Then you have them for dinner.
Right.
But anyway, it's been an interesting adventure, and I just put on Facebook that I need a picture of, I believe it's Sneed's Falls, which is
on Jack River?
Well, I don't believe it's on Jack River. It is on the Georgia-Tennessee line up in the mountains. Highway 2 coming out of Cisco, going up into the mountains. And I'm trying to get, it's the Alacalusi community or something. And Ron's looking at me like, what are you talking about? But anyway, there's a falls there, and I thought, well, that'd be a nice picture for the book, but I'm not sure I can go find it and not get lost.
Car show today,
yes.
Starting at 1 o'clock, but if you go up there now, their car's already there. They've been cars there since.
Stop by the spot and get you a good old-fashioned hamburger, or visit the Cobblestone, or
usually a couple of vendors out on the street there.
Yeah, some vendors out on the street, and but go visit our downtown merchants. Give them some of your business. They will appreciate that. Next week's show, I don't remember.
Well, I'll tell you here in just a minute if you'll keep talking while I find it on my phone here.
I think the funniest thing that I've run into, or the strangest thing that I wasn't expecting, is the book involves Polk County and Bradley County and Hamilton County and a little bit of McMinn, a little bit of Monroe, and you can't find paper maps anymore.
They are tough.
Yeah, and my Bradley County one, I think it's going to rip on all the folds because I've used it so much, but I never did find a good Polk County map.
The Ducktown Museum.
That's it.
Ken will be here, and always we can have him back every week, and he has more information. To know about the Ducktown area, he is amazing about what he can tell about the mining, the people.
See, Ducktown's in my book. The name of that village in 1836 was Ducktown, and the neighboring town was Turtletown. So those are really old names that, thank goodness, the community kept.
And actually, Copper Hill is the newer name of all of that.
Right.
And someone asked us why,
like 100 years ago,
when we did the documentary there, that's why we called it the Ducktown Basin and not Copper Hill. Well, it is the Ducktown Basin, and Copper Hill was the city it formed around the copper companies. So, so Ducktown is actually the.
Ken is always informative, and he's coming in next week on the 2nd to talk about their fall festival. That's also on September the 9th. And that should be a fun show. And he just got a bunch of money.
Oh, new signage all over?
Man, oh man, the museum looks good.
Something, if you've never been to the Ducktown Museum, it's a small museum, but it's very entertaining. There's several ladies there who grew up around the mines, and their family worked in the mines, and our Ken's there, and if you get them there and you get them to walk you through there, at the information you'll learn, it's pretty interesting to hear some of those stories. And of course, we're
well. I think the part I like the most is they show the miners' helmets and whatever fancy kind of oil that you had to get to go in them. Those folks up in Polk County probably had a hard time getting it and didn't want to pay for it, and so they just put grease out of a possum or something in their helmet and burn it.
That had to smell really good. Well, now I understand the groundhog's got real greasy, and it probably burned a long time, but I don't know if anybody could stand you or not. But of course, these guys in the mine there, who knows? So next week, Deb, it'll be the Ducktown Museum, and we got some great shows coming up this year. If you have a family member you think would have some good local history, give us a call and contact us. We would love. We like those 90-year-old people who want to come in.
The 80-year-old guy in overalls. Man, oh man, how entertaining!
And if your family run a little store down in the country, where everybody come by in the neighborhood, that's the kind of stories we like to tell.
Mm-hmm.
If your daddy runs some factory, or your family runs some factory in the 1900s, and you run it till the 50s and the 60s, we'd like to hear about those things. There's a lot of things that we can share. It don't have to be a big story. It can be your story.
Mm-hmm.
And
then on the 16th, we got a couple of guys that's been helping us keep things stirred up on Facebook about local history. We have Jeff Pettit
and Paul Hickman.
Paul Hickman coming in on the 16th.
Well,
talk about history.
I really like their, I follow their website, their Facebook page, and they post some really great history pictures. I share them with Old Town Cleveland because we're
all in this together.
It's history, folks, and we love to share it. And, everybody has a news source of pictures, and probably you do at home. Boy, what a segue into my final speech. Get those old pictures from out from under the bed and get them out. Get someone in your family to help you write down the names and what it is, and then share those photos of the history. The history doesn't have to be a building downtown. The history could be a house on a street down a little country road that used to be there, or it could be your aunt and your uncle standing somewhere at a store, or someone shaking somebody's hand. And if you don't know who they are, post it on Facebook or bring it to us. We'll post it on Facebook for you. In about 10 minutes, there'll be 20 guesses of who it is. Some of them might be right, some might not.
Sometimes it's really amazing. Somebody will post a picture and say, "This is my aunt so-and-so." And there'll be two other ladies in the picture, and somebody will come back on and at least give us one name. And, history saved.
Well, we did that with a picture out of my grandmother's stuff. It was 3 greasers standing by a car with a flat tire. Well, I figured it had to be friends of my Uncle Gene Moore. And so I posted on there, sort of told that story. It wasn't long, somebody said, "That's so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so."
My daddy, yeah.
And we go, wow. So, folks,
folks.
and as we always say here, all we try to say here, is that we'll always remember Pearl Harbor, but
will we remember Aunt Pearl?
See you next week on Old Town Cleveland.
Just me.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.